Democrat Raphael Warnock is projected to become one of the next U.S. senators from Georgia. I'm Skyler Henry in Atlanta with the latest on where both races stand and their national implications.
And a historical hire for Major League Baseball.
The four states' most watched news starts now.
Congress meets to count the Electoral College votes and declare a winner in the presidential election today. This is KOAM News at Noon. I'm Tanya Bach. Topping our first 7 minutes, Congress is meeting in a joint session today as we speak to perform its constitutional duty to count the Electoral College results, which will proclaim Joe Biden as the next president of the United States of America. But some Republicans are objecting to the results in an attempt to keep President Trump in power. The president rallied with tens of thousands of protesters this morning, claiming Democrats stole the election. More than a dozen Republican senators and several more House members are planning to object to today's Electoral College count. Well, they include Senator Roger Marshall from Kansas. And Senator Marshall says it's about making sure states are properly administering elections. Marshall and other lawmakers like Kansas Representative Ron Estes say according to the U.S. Constitution, it's up to the state legislature to determine how elections are run. But this year, in some states, those laws were changed by governors, secretaries of state, or state courts, mostly in response to COVID-19.
Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, that if we reject those electoral votes, it could significantly impact the final election results.
Marshall joins 12 other U.S. senators and more than 100 GOP House members who say they plan to contest the Electoral College results. Well, yesterday it was sunny, not too windy, and well, kind of warm, and it's definitely a different story outside today. Michael Hayslip joins us with the first look at the forecast.
We got the rain coming down, Tanya, on the Skywatch Storm Tracker. Good thing is we've been above 32 degrees all morning long, and we'll stay there because look at what they're picking up right here in northwest Arkansas. That gets a little iffy down there. So if you have to make a trip down to the southeastern portion of the four states, please know that's what you're going to be running into. But really, all things said and done, hasn't been too bad for us temperature-wise considering this type of January. 40 degrees is where we stand right now with the Freeman Health System sky camera. Wind chill of 33, that's because we saw an uptick in the wind, but it's still coming in from the southeast. And we're going to break down the barometer here just a little bit later, but we're still sitting as warm as 45 out in Neodesha and Independence, and a wide gap in temperatures compared to the 35 right now that we're seeing in Monette. Watch the left-hand side of your screen. You see the swirling action of the winds, and that's because we've got a cold front a-coming, and the precipitation doesn't want to go anywhere. Now, for the rest of our day, it'll stay as rain with that band that stretches really from Texas all the way up to the Canadian border. And our temperatures, once again, stay above freezing. But as that swirling wind moves in and we get to late Wednesday night into Thursday morning, there we go. It's not widespread, but we do see the flip over to the freezing rain and the snow. So that's what we need to all be apprised of for Thursday morning, especially if you live in the southern portion of southwest Missouri. This is not going to be as widespread as what we had last week by any means, and should be done with it here by about the afternoon hours. We just want everybody to stay on their toes. Now, after that's done, say probably late morning, and we can sit back and just get a taste of January as our temperatures are going to be high 30s, low 40s, overnight lows down into the 20s. We'll break down that barometer when I see you in a bit.
All right, thanks, Michael. Well, Democrats needed to win both runoff races in Georgia to control the U.S. Senate. One went their way early this morning, while the other is still up for grabs. Skyler Henry has the latest from Atlanta.
Votes are still being counted in Georgia, with the balance of power in the U.S. Senate on the line. The runoff between Republican Senator David Perdue and Democratic challenger Jon Ossoff is still too close to call. Ossoff sounded confident this morning, declaring victory.
And I will look forward to serving you in the United States Senate with integrity, with humility, with honor.
Overnight, CBS News projected the Reverend Raphael Warnock defeated Republican incumbent Kelly Loeffler, making the Democrat Georgia's first black senator.
Voters of this state across racial and geographical and cultural lines stood up and said it's about time we had someone in Washington who's thinking about ordinary people.
But Loeffler still sees a path to victory and promised to keep fighting.
We got some work to do here. This is a game of inches. We're going to win this election. We're going to save this country.
The high stakes in these races weren't lost on anyone here in Georgia. The candidates spent more than $340 million in just 2 months, while 4.6 million Georgians voted.
A CBS News exit poll found the coronavirus pandemic weighed heavily on voters. More than half said they experienced financial hardship due to the pandemic.
There's no way we lost Georgia.
President Trump repeatedly claimed election fraud for the presidential race in the state, but CBS News found 7 in 10 Georgia voters felt confident the votes cast in this election will be counted fairly. Under Georgia law, candidates can request a recount if the margin is less than or equal to 0.5 percentage points. Skyler Henry, CBS News, Atlanta.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer issued a statement this morning saying it feels like a brand new day. For the first time in 6 years, Democrats will operate a majority in the United States Senate. Well, if you haven't received your $600 stimulus payment, there may be a reason. After checking the status of their payment, some people discovered the account number that it was deposited in wasn't theirs. Those accounts belong to H&R Block and are associated with a refund transfer option. H&R Block officials say they're aware of the issue and are working to process the payments as quickly as possible. That's a look at today's top stories and weather in our first 7 minutes. Up next on KOAM News at Noon, history in the making as the first black female coach for Major League Baseball joins the Red Sox. We hear from Bianca Smith. And later, we're making spaghetti squash in the Mr. Food Test Kitchen. For the first time ever, a black woman will take the diamond as a professional baseball coach. 29-year-old Bianca Smith will join the Boston Red Sox this upcoming season as a minor league coach. CBS's Dana Jacobson spoke with Smith about her historic hire.
If people think, it's just because I'm a woman, well, then I'll just go out and prove them wrong.
Proving people wrong may as well be Bianca Smith's catchphrase. Her path into one of sports' most exclusive clubs was paved with anything but gold.
I love the idea that, yes, representation matters, but then there's also the idea that just because you don't see it doesn't mean you can't do it, because somebody has to be the first. Otherwise, it's never going to happen.
Smith grew up playing soccer before turning to softball in high school. She was fast and talented, but an injury during her senior year seemingly ended her chances of playing in college at Dartmouth.
I picked cheerleading instead. So I decided to cheer and started working for the Dartmouth baseball team. And I ran into the softball coach going to visit the baseball coach. And she just asked, hey, do you want to try out for the team then? And I wasn't going to say no. So I tried out and made it. And
wow. It's like fate was directing you there.
Yeah, it was crazy. I never expected that to happen.
Smith's love of the game developed as she starred on the Dartmouth softball team and the club baseball team. She'd go on to earn a dual business law degree in sports law and sports management at Case Western University, all while working as the team's director of baseball operations. She had dreams of joining a Major League Baseball front office. Baseball internships in the commissioner's office and with 2 major league clubs were next, but she realized her passion wasn't in the office. It was on the field itself, coaching.
There are times where I definitely felt like I wanted to give up. Like that period between the commissioner's office and the Reds, I actually worked 8 jobs at one time, one of them being a volunteer coach, just so I could pay for an apartment.
Why didn't you give up?
My parents. Surprisingly, there are times where they even said, why don't you just go ahead and take the bar, go practice law for a bit? But they saw how much I wanted to do this. They saw the drive and the passion, how much I loved coaching, and they were willing to do whatever was necessary to help me.
That support was all she needed. For the past 2 years, Smith served as an assistant coach and hitting coordinator at Carroll University in Wisconsin. Their team moniker, none other than the Pioneers.
The headlines are saying first black female coach in Major League Baseball. For you, what is this about?
It means more now than it did before. And this is not what I was thinking when I accepted the offer. When I accepted it, I was just thinking I get to coach. I knew it was going to be a pretty big deal. This actually ended up being, I didn't realize how big this was to people. But to me, this is just an opportunity to hopefully inspire other women of color who are interested in this game. who might even have the idea that they want to coach, but because they've never seen somebody who looks like them doing it, it never really occurred to them that they could do it too.
Smith told me she believes that her gender has been more of a challenge in baseball than her race, but added she can't differentiate between the two because as soon as someone sees her, they obviously see both. As for women in baseball, she's joining a handful of coaches, the first hired just last year, and she told me she looks forward to the day when hirings like theirs don't make headlines, they're just the norm. Dana Jacobson, CBS News, Boston.
Well, still to come on the KOAM News at Noon, Mr. Food.
Is it a melon or a squash? We've got the answer, plus ways that will make this your new favorite.
But first, Michael Hayslip returns with your complete forecast.
Take a look at our weather almanac on this January 6th, where we're going to sit right at temperatures where we should be this time of year. We got spoiled yesterday, quite frankly, as we reached up to 58 degrees at Joplin Regional Airport. Now we've got to get ready for the cold front. Already picked up 0.3 of an inch at Joplin Regional Airport, and we'll be about anywhere from about 0.5 to 0.75 inches here by the time we get to the evening hours. Don't think that just because you're on the west side of this system right here that it's not going to backfill a little bit, because we certainly have enough precipitation and enough humidity that it's not exactly just going to push off to the east. And here's why. You'll notice it's a good north-south band that just continues to track right through us, and it lasts all the way from Texas up to the upper plains. Now the nice thing is, minus that little part in northwest Arkansas, our temperatures have been fair enough. And of course, once you get into there, we're talking about the Ouachitas, it's going to be elevated areas, that's going to flip over a little bit. Our temperatures have been kind enough to give us just rain, no snow, no freezing rain. As a matter of fact, we're looking as high as 45 in Fredonia and Sedan, as low as 36 in Aurora, but at the same point in time, that's certainly not too bad. 36, nothing's even going to be close to flipping over. Watch the left-hand side of your screen here. This is the interesting prospect that we're talking about. We've been watching this kind of move in right here. You see that swirl? Well, we've been talking about that low pressure system coming off the Pacific Northwest. And while it started up here, it ended up taking that southeasterly track. So number one, that's forcing the low pressure our way. But number two, look at the wind arrows out to the left compared to what we're experiencing. That's why it only feels like it's in the low 30s in central Kansas compared to, the high 30s, low 40s, what we're seeing right now. And you can tell, even when that wind switches, it's going to come in at a very good clip. That's right at the trough of the jet stream, and that's going to bring us the low pressure system. Remember, the darker the color, the lower the pressure right there. And what I want to point out here is that you see, yep, that's bright blue. That's bright blue. Just unfortunately, we're going to have to deal with a low pressure system. So the rain lasts all the way through the evening hours, and what's going to happen early tomorrow morning is we will begin to see it flip over to some snow. Now, certainly this is not widespread, but I do want everybody on guard for tomorrow morning's travel because it happens so early and we don't have much of a warm-up. So let's go ahead and anticipate bridges, elevated surfaces. They're going to be slick tomorrow. Should be done with everything by the afternoon hours. And then after that, we can really just kind of lock in. But winter weather advisories, because the closer you get to the Ozarks and those elevated areas we were talking about, that's where we'll see most of our snow accumulation. So please know, if you live on the eastern edge of southwest Missouri, especially if you're headed towards Springfield, and especially if you're headed to northwest Arkansas tomorrow, be apprised of that situation. After we're done with that, it may stick around for a while because we've got cold overnight temperatures and 40s as we head into the weekend. Tanya?
All right, thanks, Michael. We take this time to honor today's four-state hero, Private First Class Worth Green Sr. in the U.S. Army. The Baxter Springs, Kansas native joined the Company 1 157th Infantry in 1944. He fought as a combat infantryman in the European theater, Germany, Rhineland, and throughout Central Europe. Green earned 2 Bronze Service Stars and the World War II Victory Ribbon. To Private Worth Green Sr., we thank you, our four-state hero. One bite of today's veggie side dish and everyone at the table will be saying, "This is my favorite spaghetti squash." Howard shows us how to make the low-carb dish in the Mr. Food Test Kitchen.
Every day we get lots of questions on Facebook and on our website about how to do this or how to make that. And one that we've been seeing more and more is about how to cook a spaghetti squash. So if you aren't familiar with it, watch how easy it is to prepare. And if you already know, here's a refresher course. This is a spaghetti squash. To prepare it, place it in a large pot, add an inch or so of water, and cook it covered for about 20 to 30 minutes until it's tender. You can tell it's done when you can easily insert a knife into it. Then we take it out and let it cool a bit. After that, we cut it in half, remove the seeds, and with a fork, scrape out the meaty part. It looks just like spaghetti, but these noodles have a lot less carbs. And sure, we can top it with some red sauce for a low-carb Italian feast, but today we're tossing it with sour cream, a few spices, and some cheddar cheese and baking it off. And whether you serve this as a low-carb main dish or the perfect anytime go-along, get ready for lots of taste without all the guilt. To get the recipe, all you have to do is visit our website and look for what we call my favorite spaghetti squash. I'm Howard in the Mr. Food Test Kitchen, where today we found a tasty, low-carb way for you to say, "Ooh, it's so good."
Well, you can find this recipe along with a lot more good food from the Mr. Food Test Kitchen online. Just go to our website at KOAMnewsnow.com. Here's a look at our 4 state market prices.
Rain through the evening, early morning snow flipping over. Let's be careful and get out the door early on Thursday. Over to Dow with a look at what's coming up tonight at 5.
Yeah, at 5, the pandemic has hurt a lot of companies, but it's also igniting a boost to others. Demand for candles is high across our country. With millions of Americans doing their jobs remotely, many are using candles to help signal the end of the workday and transition the home office back to home. Plus, pregnant women, many of them are questioning whether to get the coronavirus vaccine since both pregnant women and nursing mothers were excluded from clinical trials. We're going to hear from a nurse who's currently pregnant and chose to be vaccinated. And the Labette County Sheriff and more than a dozen in the department get their first doses of the coronavirus vaccine. Hope you'll join us for those stories. A lot more. KOAM News at 5.
All right. Thank you, Dow. Thanks for joining us for KOAM News at noon. We'll see you right back here at 5 o'clock.